possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the district website at the posted URL. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen or watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. NCAT Educational Channel, Verizon Channel 29 / Charter Channel 194, or SAM Government Channel, Verizon Channel 37 / Charter Channel 192. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technology means. In the event that we're unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the district's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. And there is on the posting, there was a URL to register in advance for this webinar. Going on to our agenda, the first item that we have is action on the open minutes of November 18th, 2020. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved. Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Karen?
Karen.
Karen Ayers. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote to accept the minutes. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris Covino,
Yes.
Paul Desmond,
Yes.
Kathleen Howland,
Yes.
Dan Kalenda,
Yes.
Sean O'Shea,
Yes.
Kathleen Palechko,
Yes.
and myself. And just for the person or who will be taking minutes, we just have two members that were absent, Paul Bucka and Kathy Key. The next item we have is educational policy. And the first one is a request by staff member for her child to attend Algonquin Regional High School. Mr. Martineau?
Sure. So we received a staff member request from Nicole, the member who works in the Algonquin Regional High School Language Department, is requesting that her daughter be permitted to attend Regional High School, Algonquin Regional High School, for the 21-22 academic year. And again, we have policy J170, which again allows for the committee to consider the attendance of faculty members' children at Algonquin Regional High School. The student is in good standing at her current school. There are no disciplinary issues and is in good academic standing.
Is there a motion to accept the staff member's child to attend Algonquin Regional High School, or just any questions?
I'll move.
Sean?
I'll move to accept.
Okay.
I'll second it. Kathleen?
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion or questions? Greg, what, you might have mentioned it, I might have missed it. What level of high school would this be?
She would be an incoming freshman.
Okay, and that would be beginning this year, correct?
Next, 21-22 academic year. So next year, this
year.
upcoming fall.
Okay. All right. Seeing that there aren't any other questions or comments, but it will be a roll call vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris Covino,
Yes.
Paul Desmond,
Yes.
Kathleen Highland,
Yes.
Dan Kalenda,
Yes.
John O'Shea,
Yes.
Kathleen Palechko,
Yes.
and myself, yes, it passes unanimous. The next item we have under educational policy is cancellation of field trip to the inauguration. Mr. Martineau?
Sure. So I think a little over a year ago, there was a proposal for a field trip for a group of students to attend the inauguration in January, and that was being led by, I believe, Gina Johnston, and that field trip has been canceled, and I just wanted to inform the committee of that cancellation.
Okay. Thank you for that update. And it's a shame that that was canceled, but I know who I was just hearing today from President-elect Biden's staff that they were going to try to do some virtual presentations or something of that inauguration. So maybe that's something that they'll be able to partake in. So, okay, thank you. Going on to the next is new business, is COVID-19 update. Mr. Martineau?
So just quick update for the committee, but as well as the community. So the first is we've been successfully providing opportunities for our faculty and staff to have COVID-19 screening. The goal was to test faculty and staff in between the Thanksgiving break and the December break. So our third screening that will take place will be this Friday. And also the prevalence of the virus with our faculty and staff has been extremely low, which is great news. We also will be providing an opportunity for our high school students to participate in screening if families choose to participate. The screenings will take place on Monday and Tuesday, Monday the 21st and Tuesday the 22nd. And we really encourage families to sign up and participate in the screening opportunity. They'll provide us as a district with great data around the prevalence of the virus. And it also will allow us to kind of implement a testing proof of concept to see if it's feasible to continue with testing in the months to come. The one thing that I am asking the committee for consideration on is when we return from our December break on January 4th, that day is a remote day. I'm requesting that Algonquin Regional High School remain remote on January 5th, which is Tuesday, and Wednesday, January 6th, with a purpose of being able to do a COVID-19 screening for those families and students who wish to participate in the screening process. Hybrid learning would continue on Thursday, the 7th of that week, and it would allow us to screen individuals to get a sense of the prevalence of the virus, and any student who tested positive for COVID-19 would allow us to isolate those students prior to them entering the building. So that's our thinking. So, and that's a quick update. And I'm not sure if Mary Ellen is on the call. If you want to add any details that I may have missed, Mary Ellen.
I think you did a great job.
Greg, do you need a vote by the committee to vote in those remote days, January 5th and the 6th?
Technically, I do not need a vote, but again, I think it's good practice to bring it before the committee and get the committee's stamp of approval.
Okay, so what you're looking for is January 5th, January 6th for Algonquin High School students would be remote days, and then January 7th and the 8th would be return to the hybrid.
That is accurate.
Okay. Is there a motion from the committee to accept?
I'll move to accept.
Thank you, Kathleen. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Kathleen?
Kathleen Allen, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. Oh, Shauna Shea, I see your hand raised.
It's a different topic, but it's about testing. So let's finish this up and I'll ask my question.
Okay, thank you. I'll take right after the vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Paul Bucca. Oh, I'm sorry, he's absent. Chris Covino,
Yes.
Paul Desmond.
Yes.
Kathleen Highland,
Yes.
Dan Kalenda,
Yes.
Shauna Shea,
Yes.
Kathleen Pelechko,
Yes.
Joan Frank is, and it's yes, it's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. And Shauna Shea, you have a question about the COVID?
Yes. I believe earlier, well, who knows whether it was August or September, but I believe we'd set some money aside, or the thought was to have some money aside in the sports department for winter testing of athletes. And I'm wondering if that's going to be separate or just folded into this protocol that's going on with the general student body.
So we do not have money set aside for testing student athletes. part of the money we're utilizing to conduct this screening or testing is through the CARES Act. And that money sunsets at the end of December. And we're looking at alternative funding sources, but student athletes would be woven into the testing that we would offer the student body.
Maybe I'm not recalling it correctly, but I thought we had set aside $50,000 in one of the athletic lines for testing of the winter and possibly the football, that extra season. Am I not recalling that correctly?
I don't remember that, Sean. But
I think it's a great idea.
I think we can encourage the athletes to do it. I'm not sure how many have, signed up for this, but with sports just starting, with the winter sports season just starting, the first winter sports season, I think it's a great idea if we can encourage all of the athletes as well as all the students to take part in it.
It might have been that like epic marathon night. I don't know. I thought it was in context of us adjusting the sports fees and not zeroing out that line item and keeping money in there for testing. But I guess I'm misremembering that.
Well, Sean, we can go back and check through the minutes and check that out. So
I think it would be, if that money's there, I think it would be great to pull that back out and use it just because it's a different than the fall sports. It's indoors, it's closer contact, and then going into that mid-season, whatever they call it, the third season or the fourth season with football. I think it would be a great idea if that money is still there and available.
okay, I'll get back to you on that. Okay, I'll check the minutes.
Just to add on to that, we did add the coaches we are allowing all the coaches to be tested with our staff.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What is the participation? Do you have that percentage of coaches that will do it?
All of them, a lot of them work for the district already, but a lot that don't did take part in the testing last week, and a lot more have emailed me this week. So
Perfect. Great. Okay. Greg, before we go on to the guidance department presentation, is there anything else from the directors on COVID?
No, those are the key updates at this point in time. And then just a note of the conversation that we had at our combined meeting of updating the quarantining and travel guidelines to align with the CDC and DPH, and that will be communicated to families either tomorrow or Friday.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members before we go on to the next agenda item? Okay. And Sean, did you have another question, or is that just left over? The hand raised.
Just left over, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is guidance department presentation. We have Lisa Connery, Director of Guidance. Mr. Martineau.
Sure, I'd love to introduce Lisa Connery, who is a familiar face, Director of Guidance, and I think our guidance department has done an outstanding job guiding in a pandemic. I think it's made everyone rethink how they support students, and especially our guidance department, and they've done an outstanding job. And this evening, they're here to share their successes in their work and answer any questions that the committee members might have. And Principal Bevan, I'll turn it over to you if you want to do any introductions.
Yeah, we have a wonderful guidance department, and joining us tonight, we have, in addition to Lisa Connery, who's done a really wonderful job leading the department and in the face of real challenges. We also have Becca Haberman, who's joining us, and Kate Mulcahy. And so I'm going to just let them take it away from here. Oh, Lisa, we can't hear you. I'm still having trouble hearing you, Lisa. Now I can, yeah.
Okay. I was going to say I tested my sound prior to joining this meeting. We all tested our sound, so I'm glad you can hear me. Are you going to share our slides, Sean?
Oh, you know what? I think we can share you to, Stephanie, can you give Lisa sharing privileges to?
Yeah, Lisa has sharing privileges.
Okay.
Okay. I apologize. I did not pull the PowerPoint up on.
Okay, I will.
We're sharing the slide deck. I apologize, Sean.
It's my mistake. I think, Lisa, I apologize.
So Sean, I just made you a co-host, so if you have the
Okay.
slide deck.
I will pull it up.
So anyways, thank you for having us tonight. It's always nice when we have an opportunity to share the work that's being done through the school counseling program. We appreciate the tremendous support shown for our work by the committee and the administration. So thank you very much for your continued support. I appreciate Becca and Kate joining me tonight to share how we've adjusted our work with students and families during the pandemic. I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the other counselors from our department who are in the audience tonight in support of our presentation. The work that the counselors do is invaluable in supporting our students' overall high school experience. So thank you to all of you for your continued work and support that you provide to our students and families. Your work is greatly appreciated. So this evening, we're going to be discussing the college admissions process and social emotional supports during the pandemic, as well as a few department highlights.
I'm almost there with you. Just give me about 10 more seconds. I apologize.
That's all right. If we've learned anything through this pandemic, it's patience, right?
Okay, so
and
I think
adjusting with.
Okay, I think we are okay here.
All right, so we'll go to the next screen. So as a department, we were very fortunate when the closure happened that we were already fully immersed in the college search process with students and parents, which really helped in the transition to remote learning. As a department, we began outlining the steps of the search process in January of junior year. We do this in order to provide families with ample time to engage in identifying potential colleges for their student. So prior to the shift to remote learning in March, juniors had already participated in 2 college admissions seminars, as well as admissions panel presentation. Counselors were engaged in individual meetings and the development of potential college lists for our students to research and visit. As a department, throughout the spring, we were actively communicating and working with our families, our students. We were sharing resources with students and parents on virtual exploration of colleges through virtual tours and information sessions, as well as larger virtual fair opportunities through like NACAC. We shared with students and parents resources to help guide them in accessing information on individual schools and how to optimize virtual fair experiences. This fall, we hosted 151 virtual admissions visits. They were open to our students only, which afforded them an excellent opportunity to meet with admissions representatives that are assigned to our high school and read the applications of our students. So we offered these visits on remote Mondays and after school. We set the visit schedule to help ensure visits didn't conflict with in-person learning and afforded all students the same opportunity to participate in the visits. Students were able to sign up for visits through Naviance. This year we found the number of colleges that were able to visit with our students increased significantly because admissions counselors were not physically traveling between schools. So the virtual visits really optimized the admissions counselors' time, and that ultimately ended up benefiting our students. So I'm anticipating that virtual visits will likely continue to be a part of the admissions process in the future for this very reason, but we were very pleased at the number of schools that our students were able to make contact with and have conversations and gather more information. So while the opportunities for students to physically visit schools were limited, students were provided with a variety of other opportunities to engage in the exploration process. We worked hard to communicate these opportunities to our families, and we do that through Naviance, which is an incredibly useful communication tool. that has proven to be even more invaluable throughout the pandemic as we guide our families in post-secondary planning. So in addition to college exploration opportunities, our families were also provided information on the financial aid process. So through the Massachusetts Education Finance Authority, also known as MEFA, our families were provided with virtual presentations on financial aid. Typically, we host an in-person MEFA financial aid presentation, but due to the COVID-19 restrictions, all of the presentations were held virtually. So the upside to the virtual presentations was that it offered our families more flexibility in the time and date they could participate in a presentation, which was really beneficial. So that our families were provided with all of the information that they needed in order to successfully complete the financial aid process. Our scholarship program also continues to remain robust. You know, we utilize Naviance as a tool to complete the scholarship process. We're able to provide students with electronic applications along with instructions on how to complete the scholarship process. Students and parents are able to access all of this information about scholarships anytime, anywhere, which is helpful given the busy lives of our students. In the spring, students were able to complete the scholarship process electronically. So even though we were remote, our students were still able to access all of this information, complete their applications, and submit their applications electronically to the Career Resource Center. So despite the challenging times, we were still able to award over $70,000 in scholarships last year to our seniors. You know, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we were unable to host our annual senior scholarship night. However, we did, create a video presentation where we had, a PowerPoint with the senior pictures on it. We read a short paragraph about the awards, announced the students, posted their picture up on the screen in the auditorium. So we were able to acknowledge student achievements, and we're crossing our fingers that maybe we'll be able to hold a live Senior Scholastic Awards ceremony in May. We'll see, hopefully, because it's just not the same when you're in the auditorium, just a couple of us reading student names. It's so much nicer when we can have the students in front of us and shake their hand, see the smiles on their faces as well as their parents. But the good news is that despite the challenges, we were still able to, continue with the scholarship process, and we'll begin that process in January for our senior class. So despite all of the many challenges, we have still been able to support our students throughout the college admissions process with as many resources as we can possibly provide to them. Of course, it never replaces them being able to physically visit a campus, but we certainly have provided them with the information they need and to be able to access what is available to them. Another important part of the admissions process is, of course, standardized testing. So I'm going to let Becca Haberman speak about the opportunities that we've provided to our students throughout the fall to access standardized testing. Are you there?
Okay, so if any of you have been parents, like I know Kathleen, before and seen me talk when we're in the auditorium, I will always say that standardized testing, they are the evil empires. They spend a lot of money on getting kids to spend a lot of money for testing. That being said, when everything shut down in the spring, they were able, College Board, who's in charge of the AP exams, were able to actually get it online. So our kids were actually able to take AP exams online. So that was the good thing. In the spring, though, because of COVID, we all pretty much across the board, all spring exams were canceled for at least the East Coast. But in the fall, when we started to look at a way how we could do this safely to let our kids test, for the first time ever since I've been at Algonquin, which has been over 20 years, we did one day in September where it was school-based during the day for any senior. It was open to all seniors. So all seniors had a chance. They didn't have to come in on a Saturday. They didn't have to miss a sports game or anything. So we had a lot of seniors in, and everybody got a chance to take it. We did offer the SAT and the SAT subject tests in October, and we were also able to offer the ACT in October. We did also offer the PSAT exam for juniors only in October. I know in the past, a lot of sophomores have taken it, but because of the numbers with the junior class, we wanted them to have a chance to get an idea of what standardized testing is all about. So we had it for our juniors. The sophomores next year will be able to take it as juniors. The majority of the colleges right now, 2/3 of them across the country, are test optional for the class of 2021. A lot of those schools that are also now test optional for this current senior class have a test optional policy that's going for a couple of years because they really want to see what it does by not looking at standardized tests. There's also quite a few schools that have actually gone test blind. The difference between test blind and test optional is test optional, a student can decide to send their score if it's good and not send it if they don't want to. Test blind, a lot of schools, and in particular, all the UC, University of California school systems, including California Institute of Technology, are all going to be test blind for the next 3 or 4 years. And that means that they will be not looking at testing at all. So my hope is that the one good thing coming out of COVID is that maybe colleges will really stop looking at one test to determine whether or not a student's a fit, and really, again, look at the most important things, which are, we know their transcript, who they are as a person, all the other things they bring to the table. So the test optional site, Fair Test, has a wonderful list going, and as we're working with our juniors in January, we will be letting them know them. They have enough pressure in their lives without having to worry about standardized testing. And Lisa, I forget what's next, so college application.
Okay. So I'll just quickly go over kind of how we maneuvered the college application process with COVID. So in the spring, the guidance counselors held junior college workshops in late January and the second one in early February, just as we do every year. In these workshops, we utilize Naviance to show students how to perform college searches based on their preferences like size, location, major. We showed students how they're able to use the data on Naviance to compare themselves to past Algonquin students who have applied to the schools that they might be interested in, so they can have a better idea if the school is more of a match, a reach, a safety. We also held a junior parent workshop in late January where we presented both workshops to the parents so they received the same information that their students had. And then we later uploaded that presentation to our website for any parent that may have missed the presentation. We then also hosted a panel made up of admissions counselors from Framingham State, Northeastern, and Syracuse at the beginning of March, so 1 week before we shut down. So we just squeezed that right in there. The counselors answered questions based on their experience in admissions and gave the students advice and tips for the admission process. At the end, it was opened up to the students to ask the counselors any questions that they might have. Also, every year, counselors meet with juniors to go over their specific post-secondary plan. In 2020 was no different. If the student is college bound, we go through a college search with them to learn what they're looking for in a school, build a potential list with them that consists of safety, match, and reach schools. And we talk about a testing plan, which obviously didn't go according to plan this year. And for non-college bound students, we talk about what their plan will involve, whether it's a voc school, gap year programs, employment opportunities, or whatever it might be. We also talk with our students about their potential senior year course load. And these meetings with the juniors were held in person until schools were closed. Then we moved to virtual appointments. So we reached out to students we weren't able to connect with yet in person. And each counselor also created a sign-up genius for individual meetings that allowed for students to sign up for a time to meet that worked with their school schedule, whether it was their first meeting with us or their fifth. The third workshop that we typically hold was broken up into several emails that were sent out every week towards the end of the school year. We decided to go with weekly emails so students weren't overwhelmed with all the information we were sending out. We attached videos or handouts to go along with our emails that help guide them on whatever topic we were discussing that week, whether it was from touring colleges virtually, which is kind of new to all of us, to writing the essay, and to asking a teacher for a letter of recommendation. With every workshop that we present, we always have a workbook or various handouts to go along with the presentation, whether it's a hard copy when we're in person or emailed if we're remote. Then this fall, our traditional senior workshops that were held, typically held in the classroom, were presented online. We were still able to do what our typical presentation consists of, despite being virtual. So we could still show the students how to use Naviance to request transcripts and letters of rec, and show them how to complete different parts of the Common App. We also held a webinar for the parents where we went through all the same information that we went through with the students. Similar to this, what we did in the spring, the workbooks that we created were emailed home to students and parents, so they were able to follow along and refer back to these workbooks to follow the step-by-step instructions that we gave students that was what we reviewed in the workshops. Counselors held individual meetings and are still holding individual meetings with all of our seniors to go through each student's plan and their college list or various post-secondary plans. We want to make sure every student has a well-balanced college list if that's what their path is, and that they're on track for meeting any deadlines. We go through their Naviance accounts to make sure everything's completed on time, and we often proofread their Common App to make sure all their information is correct and complete. We continue to have these individual meetings with the seniors as the application season is kind of starting to wind down, and they're making any last-minute adjustments to their college list or their overall secondary plan, post-secondary plans. We utilize Naviance to submit students' transcripts and letters of rec to colleges. So after a student requests their transcript on Naviance, we're able to go right in and send everything along electronically. And just like any other year, we've had many students apply early action and early decision. Students are beginning to hear back the decisions from some of their schools. And while we love to celebrate all of the good news, just a few that we have recently been celebrating in the office are acceptances to Colgate, Connecticut College, BC, BU, Washington University in St. Louis, Northeastern, Hamilton, Caltech, Michigan State, Clemson, University of Nebraska, UMass Amherst, of course, Merrimack. Just kidding. So we could go on forever, but those are just some of the more recent celebrations we've had.
Thanks, Kate. I think that's really great news because it just shows that despite all of the challenges, the college admissions process continues forward, right? And our students are being provided with a lot of wonderful opportunities. I think the nature of our work being very individual at this point in time with the college process, it's very easy for us to continue that work remotely. You know, we're doing all of our appointments, we're doing on remote days because we feel it's important that the students are in class and in person for learning. So all of our work is being done remotely with students, and it's really easy to be able to screen share with the students. So they're able to pull up their Naviance account. We're able to see what they're working on and what they're doing. They're able to share essays with us. They're able to log right into their Common App account. We're able to walk through it, check it, make sure everything is squared away. So the process has continued to be pretty seamless for us. in our work. And so many of our students, I don't know the exact percent, but it's between 60 and 70% of our students still applied early. I think the pandemic also allowed a lot of our students to have more time to be able to complete the process this summer because they didn't have anything else going on. So a lot of our students came back in the fall really ready and prepared to engage in the process. And they continue to be excited about the possibilities and the opportunities. And I think that's what's most important right now, is to realize that our kids are hopeful and they're excited and they're looking forward to these opportunities, even though life is a little bit different right now. So our kids are really having getting some great feedback and some great results, and we're excited for them.
So, you know, a lot of times people think as guidance is just college counselors. And I know that you as school committee members know that we do a lot more. And we see a lot of kids always for social emotional supports. This year with the pandemic beginning in the spring has obviously done a job on how we handle the social emotional supports. We're not having as many kids in our office unless it's a dire emergency, but we are still doing a lot of Zooming, a lot of meetings with kids and families and parents via Zoom. With the quarantine students now that we've got, the nurses have been great on updating us as to what kids are out, whether or not they can work remotely while they're out. So that's put a whole different spin for us on case management. Used to be, you know, I might have a couple of kids out sick with the flu or concussion. Now it's like daily, certainly since Thanksgiving, a large list of students out. So we are the primary person who will, after we get it from the nurse, work with the family and the teachers on how these kids can stay up to date while they are home. So yeah, we each have our own little lists and trying to help. And I think the families have been really supportive of how much help that the teachers are giving the kids, and everybody's understanding that this is a new world right now. We also, we meet as a team with administration for student assistant team every week via Zoom. And this year we started a new list called Students Needing Assistance. So if teachers are noticing that a kid is absent from their class a lot or not doing their work, they will add that name to this list that we all check regularly. Plus, I have to say our teachers are always amazing. They will always email guidance if they're worried about somebody. And so then we can reach out to that student's other teachers, find out what's going on, and then work with the family, work with the student to help get them back into an academic mode. And that's, you know, we do the parent-student check-ins and meetings. We use Canvas, not as much as the kids or the teachers, but I use it quite a lot when a student is saying, yeah, you know, things are going fine. And I'll be like, but wait, why is it showing on Canvas that you've got a lot of missing assignments? So we can use Canvas with the kids and help them to really use Canvas as a way to organize themselves. PowerSchool, we're all learning. We're trying to figure out how to figure out the attendance with PowerSchool. Luckily, we have a wonderful attendance secretary who sends us a daily list of who's absent. Because it doesn't help when I go into PowerSchool and delete a student's attendance record. Luckily, I've got people at the school who can make that come back, so that's a good thing. But we're doing a lot of virtual check-ins. The Access program, which is our program for kids who really are struggling emotionally, maybe due to illness, they've missed a lot of school. That program has hit the ground running because Mary Ellen Wolf, the tutor in that program, and Sarah McNulty, the adjustment counselor associated with that program, they are working tremendously with students who are trying to stay connected in a time where it's hard to be connected. They're also helping our students who are 4-day-a-week students, some of our higher special ed students who really need to come in 4 days a week, and maybe they can't go to a cohort B class when they're a cohort A because that class is full with people. They might use the Access program to help them in that particular period to do some work. We, as a team and with our school resource officer, if we're really, really concerned that a kid is not showing up, not zooming in, and we've called home and we get really worried, we will actually go out and Detective Forward will go and do a well-being check on kids. And I think, Kate, I just did your whole bit, right? So I'll let you talk about interface.
So I'll take the last 2 bullet points. So often students need more support than what we can provide during the school day. So we will work with families to refer them to outside supports. We have a running list of supports in the area that we can provide to families when needed. And this year, we're lucky enough to be able to use the Interface Referral Service, which is a program through William James College. Northborough Youth and Family has collaborated with Interface, so we're able to refer any Algonquin student to this service. So Interface is a mental health and wellness referral helpline, and callers are matched with mental health providers from their database, and they're able to be connected within a short period of time. So guidance and adjustment counselors went through a training with Interface and Northborough Youth and Families to learn more about this program, and it's been a super helpful resource this year as many mental health providers in the area are either at capacity and not accepting any more clients, and it's just been very difficult for students and families to get connected and find the help that they're looking for. So this has been just a wonderful resource for us, and we've heard pretty good feedback from families who have used this service as well. In terms of in-person support for emotional concerns, while we are doing a lot of our work remotely and certainly checking in with a lot of students virtually, we're still available for in-person support for emotional concerns. So if a student's having a difficult time when they're in the building, we will always meet with them in person to help provide support. I know sometimes the nurses bring the students down to our office after they kind of check in with them, since the students sometimes report to the nurse first, whether it's a panic attack or whatnot, or teachers send them down to our office. So certainly when there's any emotional concerns, we're still available for that in-person check-in. And then we tend to always follow up, virtually as well, just with some regular check-ins with some students too. So both in-person and virtual, we're there.
Thanks, Kate. I think it's important to mention our school adjustment counselors. We have a tremendous team of adjustment counselors, 4 of them, who provide a lot of emotional support for our students. And they're an incredible resource for us, and we're grateful for the work that they do. I have to say, to go back to the students needing assistance form, that was the brainchild of Sean. And, he created that, and it's been incredibly helpful. And every week he sends out a reminder to our teachers to make sure, hey, keep your eyes on on our kids. Let us know if they're struggling. We check that. And I must say that, it's been an incredible collaboration with the administration jumping in and reaching out to families and contacting students and checking in with us and our school adjustment counselors. And we're all working really hard to keep our eyes on our students to make sure not only are they, thriving academically, but that their emotional needs are being taken care of as well. And I think really what we're seeing is just the shift that emotionally, a lot of our kids are doing pretty well, and that, a lot of the, where most of the concern has happened is how they had to shift to remote learning, and, how they had to learn how to manage the time that they had now at home. And so a lot of students are adjusting to that and adapting to that. And we're seeing improvements, which is great news, right? It's more like college life, where they have fewer hours of in-person instruction, and then they have to take some more personal responsibility. You know, in addition to that, the guidance department we created a virtual check-in. And so we've sent out a Google form to our students, especially currently right now, our sophomores and our juniors. We've had more eyes on our seniors and freshmen at this time, just because the nature of the work, transitioning our freshmen into high school and guiding our seniors through the post-secondary planning process. But we created a virtual check-in just to see how our sophomores and our juniors were doing. And it was really great to get the feedback from them. And we asked them some fun questions about what they've been doing in quarantining, when they've been quarantining. And, you know, overall, we're getting some very positive feedback from the students, and we're finding that they are doing well, and they are adapting and adjusting, and they're incredibly resilient. So kudos to I think the entire student assistance team, not just guidance, but also school adjustment and the administration in our work to kind of make sure that our students are on track and that they're healthy. Okay. So thanks, Kate and Becca, for that update on social emotional supports. Just a couple quick little department highlights that we've been working on. So we made some adjustments, of course, because from a programming standpoint, some of the work that we had previously done with our freshmen was no longer viable given the COVID-19, restrictions and everything. So we've made some shifts, and we've been looking at more of, some of the social emotional learning. And so some of the things that we've been doing with the students is we've been focusing in our freshman seminars on growth mindset, because we feel that this is an important topic to cover with our students. So we've been working with students to help them understand the meaning of growth mindset and how individuals with a growth mindset believe that their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others, that they're not just born with it, but with good effort and strategies and a willingness to seek out help from others, that anybody can develop their talents. So with a growth mindset, you learn to embrace challenges, persist in the face of adversity, and see effort as a pathway to mastery. People with growth mindset are not afraid of failure, and they see failure as growth. They're open to feedback as part of the learning process. So we really want to help students understand how mindset impacts outcome. How they think about things really impacts what ultimately their outcome might be. So it's really about optimizing their individual potential through effort, strategies, and support. And we're also utilizing a growth mindset approach in our work with freshmen to help them identify changes that they might like to make. And how to improve their outcomes and setting goals to achieve the desired outcome. So we are focused on, growth mindset through hard work and effort and strategies, and helping them to set goals and persist through this. So if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's the importance of resiliency, persistence, grit, and adaptability, all of which really align with developing a growth mindset. So in our freshman seminars, that is what we're focusing on with our students, because we think that is definitely a soft skill that will pay huge dividends for them as they move through life. We continue to work on expanding our career exploration opportunities for our students. And one thing that we really have worked hard on is our annual career day. So prior to the pandemic, we were up to hosting over 80 community members from various career fields in classrooms. We would have an annual career day, and we would have between 80 and 90 presenters come in, and they would go to a specific departments, and we rotate departments each year. And they would be in a classroom, and they would present to the different students that were moving in and out of the classroom. And so this has been a great opportunity for our students, because presenters share their career pathway with the students. And students get to experience like 6 or 7 presentations each year. So over the course of their 4 years at Algonquin, they might see like 25 presentations around career pathways, which I think is a tremendous opportunity for our students, mainly because I think it's important for students to realize that there's really no clear pathway and that career exploration is a journey. Now, of course, if they have ideas about what it is they would like to do, then we're going to guide them towards the development of those skills and, of course, programs and majors that align with that. But it's just an understanding of it's a journey. And a lot of our presenters, when they come into the classroom, that is the message that they send to our students. So even though we had a pause on that with the pandemic, we're really looking forward to continuing this program and continuing to work with our community members to try to find internship opportunities and provide informational interviews for our students. So that continues to be a focus for us in regards to career exploration. And again, I think Becca and Kate already really touched upon, case management during the pandemic. That's been a tremendous, undertaking on the counselor's part, given the number of students who, are kind of coming in and out of the building. The amount of communication and collaboration around student attendance and schoolwork has just increased significantly. And so we're very fortunate to have such an amazing supportive group of teachers who are working hard alongside us to support the needs of all of our students. So we continue to kind of work hard to meet the needs of all of our students. And even though we're finding the need for case management has increased, again, we're finding that most of our students continue to fare well throughout the pandemic. So I think with just a matter of time here and some continued collaboration and hard work, I think we will see our students and our teachers, our faculty, our families through this pandemic and, ultimately, hopefully find some sense of normalcy again in our lives. So again, that's just a brief summary of some of the stuff that's going on in guidance. We appreciate the opportunity to share some of our work with you. I don't know if people have specific questions about the work in guidance that we can answer for you.
Thank you. I was muted there. I'd like to thank Kate, Becca, and Lisa for your overview and detailed report of the guidance department and showing all the different avenues of how you're reaching out to our students. I especially like the students needing assistant program. Is that the one that was brought in by Sean Bevan?
Yes, it was. Yes.
I think that's really great, especially doing the academic and the emotional, especially during this time, but I think any time. Just, putting on the radar that you're seeing that maybe once a student is just faltering or just needs a little extra support, it's better to get that at the beginning stages until it becomes a larger problem. And just by passing around the names of the students that you're looking at is just a great asset, because so many times just one teacher may make a good connection with a student, and that's all you need. And you can work together in group meetings and that and just try to solve the problem. So hats off to you. We do have questions from board members, but my only question was, do you still identify freshmen to go with a counselor, and does that stay for all 4 years of their enrollment at Algonquin?
Yes, it does. So when students come in freshman year, they are assigned a guidance counselor and they stay with them all 4 years. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to now open it up to questions, and we do have 6 members. So I'll take them in order in which I received them. And the first one will be Sean O'Shea, Chris Covino, Kathleen Plutchko, Kathleen Highland, and Paul Desmond. So be ready, ladies. They're here. Sean O'Shea.
You're chuckling. You're like, oh my goodness, 6 people. Well, first, as a parent of a senior, I just want to thank you, and the whole department. I know all the tremendous work that goes in starting years back to get students ready for the transition, as well as prepare us parents for the transition, and prepare us well. You do. So thank you for all that, and thank you for all the other supports you're doing, in very different ways during this whole pandemic time. My question, and it can be brief, is you were addressed in great detail what the school is doing for students who are going to college. I'm wondering about, right now a lot of people are rethinking college or other pathways to, post high school. So I'm wondering what the school does to prepare students for different alternatives or to think differently.
So I think it just depends on the individual student. And, a lot of our seminars, of course, are developed around the majority, but anytime we're doing a presentation with the students, we're also talking about, whether it's vocational or work or gap year or military, whatever it might be, we're presenting that, and we design our seminars around the majority. And then we spend a lot of time working individually with students. So if we have a student who is interested in a gap year, then we will certainly direct them towards programming for that. If we have a student who's pursuing vocational opportunities, and certifications, then we will direct them towards those programs as well, whether it's at one of the community colleges or it might be at Assabet. They have a post-grad program. There's various opportunities where students can go and, get vocational training. And if they're looking for work experience, then we certainly will assist them with that as well as, develop a resume, help them with interviewing, if they need help filling out applications. It really is an individual process based on the student and, what they would like to pursue.
Yeah, and I liked hearing the pursuing of internships for students, because I think that's really impactful, because my older son did an internship thinking he wanted to go one way, and that turned him a whole different direction. So I think it gives, students a real good experience to gather a lot of those skills they can't in school too. So that was nice to hear. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Chris Covino.
Thank you very much, Joan. First of all, I'd just like to echo the sentiments that have been expressed by Joan and Sean. As the parent of a sophomore whose access service is provided by the guidance office, I understand how valuable those services are now, especially with all that's going on related to COVID-19. And as a teacher myself, understanding the emotional needs of these students and relying, the teacher's reliance on guidance counselors to help really kind of round out the services that are needed by these students is really, you serve a very important role. And I think it's a role that gets minimized a little bit in some cases. And I think, those roles are certainly more apparent now, I think, than they've been in the past, at least more to the forefront. And so I just want to compliment you on your presentation and all you do for the students at Algonquin. I do have a question related to the PSAT administration from this past fall. I know that, and you mentioned that the juniors were able to take the PSATs this past fall. And it's my understanding that the College Board is going to be offering the PSAT again for an administration at some point this winter. And I was just wondering if there are any plans in place at all to allow students that were unable to take it this past fall to take it this upcoming winter.
So we do not have a plan to do that, to engage in PSAT testing. The opportunity is being provided in January, and with it being so close, coming off the holidays and everything, we opted to not offer standardized testing in January because we had offered it in the fall. So we had made the decision to not offer it in the January. Now, I don't know if there will be additional opportunities. We could certainly look into it, but kind of given the restrictions that we were under, we prioritized the juniors for this year, with the PSAT testing, simply because of the number of students that we would be bringing into the building to attempt to test them.
No,
so we will not be offering PSAT testing in January yet.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your answer.
Kathleen Plechko.
So I'll also echo, I've been at this long enough and my kids are old enough that I've seen a I think, a great transition of the guidance department from many, many years ago to where you are now. And I think just you're doing great things. And so my question is fairly simple, I hope. So this career day, how long has that been going on?
So we have been doing that for like 4 years. So we started out very small because we wanted to kind of get, a process in place. So we started with the math department, and then it went so well that the other departments were really excited about it. And they're like, we want to get on board. So then we added another department the second year. And so for the past couple of years, we've been rotating departments. So typically it's about 4 departments each year who invite the speakers into their classrooms, and we spend an entire day, and the teachers host the speakers for us, because it really does take the entire community to pull this event off. And by doing so, it offers a lot more opportunities to our students. So we recognize from a guidance perspective that we were not going to be able to provide the magnitude of experience that the students really would benefit from. So by engaging with the departments and getting buy-in from the different departments, it really allowed us to expand the opportunity. The teachers love it. They love having, because a lot of our parents come in. We've now started having alumni come in and present. So the students love it when we have, a young 27, 28-year-old Algonquin alum who's finding success, who comes back in and helps them to understand that it's a journey. So the past couple of years, we are up to almost 90 presenters in a given year coming in, and the students rotate in and out. They just follow their schedule, and they go into the classroom, and then, whatever presenter is in there, and we try to align the presenters with the content area. So if we know that it's going to, they're in the math department, then we find, people who are in careers that are related to mathematics, and, if it's English, we do our best. But we've had a tremendous response from the community, and it just continues to grow. So we're really excited. So we kind of grew. So the past couple years, it's been up to 90 presenters.
Well, that's great. I'm thrilled to hear that, and keep on trucking.
Thanks.
Next is Kathleen Howland.
I just have to say that it just warmed the cockles of my wintry heart that you would talk about a growth mindset and what it meant, because this is the new normal. And being able to go with the way things are and not against the way things are, to yearn and pine and grieve for the way things are, it just seems like a sad use of a life force when there's so much in front of them. And it will always be about pivoting and recreating and innovating. And I just have to applaud hearing that. It meant so very much. So thank you for taking that on. I think that could be one of the great lessons of this time. If not the greatest, for sure. So thank you.
Thanks. We're excited about those seminars.
All right, thank you, Kathleen. Paul Desmond.
I hate following Kathleen Howland because I'm nowhere near that eloquent, but I do have some questions. I was happy to hear about the students needing assistance idea and the interface referral service. I think those are both great ideas, but I wonder about kids who, for whatever reason are not identified as kids needing assistance, just kind of flying under the radar, but they do need help. I mean, I guess my question is, how do you market yourselves to the kids so that they understand what services are available through guidance and they, feel comfortable coming to you?
I mean, we start that whole process by, that was actually our first seminar that we did with our freshmen. Was we kind of went over, the role of the guidance counselor. And we talked with them about all of the different things that we can help them with. And I think we really try to normalize, what it means to kind of come to guidance and to seek out help. And, we let them know that it's okay that, if they're struggling, if they need help, that we are here to help them, that the work that we do is confidential. I think Chris had mentioned, sometimes it goes, kind of unnoticed, untalked about, and we want it to be that way. It's always nice when people thank us for that work, but we kind of want it to be that way because it's confidential in nature. And we want to allow students and parents to feel comfortable to reach out to us to seek out that help. with ultimately, focusing on a student's well-being. So we spend a lot of time talking about that and letting students know that, this is something that we do on a regular basis. We're quite comfortable with it, and all we really want is for them to be healthy and to be safe and to be well. And that's our primary focus. So when we go in and we do our group seminars, we talk about that. We also talk about that with parents. Even when we're in conversations with parents, we might have a parent who's stressed out or a student who has fallen behind in their work. We oftentimes take the time to talk about how, your student may be, struggling with a health issue, but sometimes, behind that, there might be some anxiety or there might be some stress or there might be some depression that, is a result of that struggle. And we encourage them to seek out supports. We let them know that we have the referral process, that we have in-school support. So we spend a lot of time having those confidential conversations with students and parents. And we also do it publicly in our work with students in our seminars. So we try to normalize it and help students to realize that, sometimes you do struggle. And with some good support, you can definitely, kind of get back on track, and your wellness is what's most important.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, and I see that's the end of our questions. So once again, Kate, Becca, and Lisa, thank you for your presentation. Greg, do you want me to?
Yeah, I just want to just take a minute and publicly thank the guidance department and the team for its tremendous effort. They do amazing work on a normal year, but I think this year they reinvented how they do business, and I think they've demonstrated and modeled that growth mindset to their students. And just again, want to publicly thank Lisa, Becca, and Kate for their hard work this year, and thank you.
Well, thank you for having us. And again, we appreciate your continued support, and happy holidays. And we wish you a healthy and happy new year.
Happy holidays to all of you too.
Thank you, Lisa. Great job. I'll see you on Friday. Enjoy the day tomorrow in the morning.
All right, we go on to our next agenda item. Before we do so, I just got a text message from Chris Covino that said he was having some trouble with his transmission. And then also Dan Kalenda had to leave at 8:10 to go to another appointment. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Greg. The next agenda item under new business is number 3, Coalition for Equity update.
I'll ask Rhoda Webb to provide a brief update.
Good evening. So the Coalition for Equity had its third meeting on December 8. The 33 members on the coalition, as a reminder, community members, parents, teachers, administrators, 3 Algonquin students, and an alumni. We're in the process of adding more high school students to have 2 per grade in order to ensure continuity of the work. The coalition now, we have formed 3 working groups: a community outreach group, curriculum and instruction, and policies, handbooks, procedures, and practices work group. So each group is going to meet in between sessions when the whole group comes together and report on the work being done. And at this point, what we do during the meetings is also dedicate some time to listen to the members' stories so that we can gain a deeper understanding of each other and build trust as we embark on this crucial work of equity.
Okay, I see. Paul Desmond, do you have a question or comment?
Nope, that's a leftover. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you for your update on this, and it's interesting that you have gone out to 3 different areas. So you must have did they get to select the areas that they had the most interest in?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Members, yes.
Okay, and then how many meetings, this was the second meeting you've had, correct?
So this was the third meeting, and one thing that I forgot to say, 5 of coalition members have joined the mascot study group at Algonquin. But they're also part of the 3 working groups that we have formed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any comments or questions from board members? Kathleen Plechko?
So I'm on the Coalition for Equity, one of the 33 members, and I have to say that it is just a phenomenal group of people. It really is, especially, Rhoda mentioned that we're hearing everyone's personal stories as to why they put their name forward and wanted to be involved in this. And, we just have some incredible minds that are having great discussions and tackling some of the, really hard issues. And the work has just begun. So I'm just thrilled to see that it's not just 33 people, but there's also real progress being made on all levels, with the NASA administrators, with us, with students, with, certainly with teachers and the whole issues surrounding curriculum. I see very good things coming of this endeavor.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you also, Kathleen, for serving on this committee. A true representation for our committee. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from board members? And I can see that Chris Covino is back, so thank you, Chris. Greg, any follow-up or go on to the next agenda item?
Next agenda item.
Okay, so it's under new business is legislative update, and is the state fiscal year 2021 budget.
So just a quick comment before I talk about the fiscal 21 budget, and that is, if you hear snoring in the background, that is my dog. So over there in the corner. So it's not any other of my family members. So just a quick brief update about the fiscal 21 budget. Again, it's hard to believe that we're talking about the state budget for 21 at this point in time, but there's great news that it has been signed by the governor, and that our projections were on target. So circuit breaker, Chapter 70, and transportation reimbursement were at projected levels. So again, the governor's budget did not impact any of our forecasting for fiscal year 21, and they will be starting fiscal year 22 budget at the State House. So again, we're ending one fiscal budget process and beginning another. So more information as that process unfolds.
Okay, thank you. Going on to the next, number 5 under new business is approval of grants and donations, and there, Greg has supplied in our attached links a letter concerning this FY21 risk management grant. And in the beginning, it said, congratulations on your MIA grant award. We're confident that your grant award will assist in your community's proactive risk management efforts. So that was just I'm sure Greg will give us more detail.
Sure. So Keith Lavoie worked with Mike Gorman, and Keith can provide a quick update around the purpose of the grant, the money received, and how it will help Algonquin.
Thanks, great. A huge credit to Facilities Director Mike Gorman for his work. He has worked collaboratively with Maya in the past on these grant opportunities, and he did take advantage of this year's round of applications, and we were very fortunate to be awarded the grant on behalf of his recommendations. So a lot of the things are related to the COVID-19 pandemic and required for the work that needs to be done. Some of the things that have been offered is the ventilation and dilution. Certainly something that we've taken advantage of. We have installed standalone HEPA filtration devices in many of the classrooms at Algonquin, which has certainly helped out with the current configuration. And the cost of the units and replacements filters is what was requested to help offset the cost to the district. And moving forward, it has provided a nice layer of protection for us to make sure that the air quality remains at a high level at Algonquin. And I think it certainly has provided with a nice peace of mind as we plan for our reopening. And I think Principal Bevan would attest to that. Certainly being in the classrooms there, they are being utilized on a regular basis, and we are collaborating with the teachers on how to best use those. We provided some instruction sheets with the help of a couple of teachers at Algonquin to put that together. So it has been a nice benefit for the building, and we were able to offset the cost with the benefit of this grant. So it has been a win-win.
Well, thank you very much, Keith, and please thank Mike Gorman also for the efforts in getting this grant. In the letter, it said that the grants money had to be submitted and completed with invoices by May 14th, 2021. Is this work going on right now, or is this just in the planning stages and work will be completed in the spring?
Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was, we were able to do this for devices that were already purchased.
I think actually these are ongoing right now as well. I think that we were able to do it for some that were purchased and then also some of the ongoing work.
Okay, good.
So yeah, there's both.
Okay, thank you.
Mike has received this grant previously, so he's very aware of the requirements that Maya has, and he does a great job with this every year and finding a need and being able to apply these funds.
Okay. All these grants help, especially in the economic times we're facing. So thank you for everybody for the hard work and diligence. I know submitting these grants is not an easy process, but when it's done, it's so worthwhile. So I'd like to entertain a motion, as we've always done on these grants and donations, to accept it. And this is the MIA grant in the amount of $7,146. Sean?
Move.
So moved by Sean. Is there a second?
Second. Paul Desmond.
Second by Paul Desmond. Any discussion or comments? Okay, it's a roll call vote to accept. Karen Ayers?
Yes.
Chris Covino?
Yes.
Paul Desmond?
Yes.
Kathleen Howland?
Yes.
John O'Shea?
Yes.
Kathleen Palechko?
Yes.
And myself, yes, it passes unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks, Keith. Next one is, now we're on to the superintendent's report to the committee. Mr. Martineau.
Sure. At this time, I'll turn it over to Principal Bevan for his principal's report.
Thank you, Superintendent Martineau and Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to share with you some updates on some of the things happening at the school. So I'm going to share my screen again here and let you know what's happening. So worth noting, I just happened to look at the calendar, and we are on 3 months ago today. We returned to school after the 10-day opening with PD. So that was on September 16th, and here we are on December 16th, and we've had 3 months of that one period of time for remote learning, and then what I think has been a very successful hybrid instructional period of time. And some of the things that, as I shared last time, have started to feel like they're returning to normal, but also there are many things that are quite a bit different. So I have some very pleasant news to share. Excuse me. The Harbinger, which is our really wonderful school newspaper, is perennially one of the strongest newspapers, certainly in the region and really in the country. National Scholastic Press Association as a finalist, and then also by the Columbia Scholastic Press Association as a finalist in their processing of the best papers in the country. And as I noted here, there were 49 finalists from across the country for the NSPA Association's award, and in the CSPA. There were only 43 finalists, and we are among those. Additionally, we had 2 former editors-in-chief who are now graduated from us, who were recognized for a story they wrote on Triple E, which seems like so long ago that we were thinking about Triple E, but they wrote a really wonderful news story that I highly suggest checking out. And it's you can see the image over here. And those students were now alums are Gabriella Paz Soldan and Catherine Hayden. for their piece, This Bites, Tripoli's Impact on Algonquin. So really great job for the students of our newspaper, those who have graduated and those who still are here. The newspaper is really it's a really critical element of our school culture, and sharing news and being part of the democratic process really requires a strong newspaper, and our school boasts one of the best around. So cheers to the Harbinger kids. And I will put in a plug for myself. I ran the Harbinger for 7 years, I think, when I was a teacher, and it was a real point of pride, and it was a really wonderful paper. And advisors, Lindsay Copens and the photo advisor, Michelle Shepard, have done a wonderful job in steering the paper toward even greater excellence. So well done to those individuals and to the students. The Drama Hawks, which is our theater program, had to really rethink how to put on a performance this year. There were many, many barriers that they had to overcome, but the show Must Go Online was the name of the show they decided, which was, and it was a really wonderful experience. I think our primary goal was to make sure that all the students enrolled in the program had a good experience and were able to showcase their wonderful talents. And there were many screenshots I could have shared, and so I had to kind of pick and choose. But up here on the top, we have 2 students. On the right is one of our singing performers, and on the left is one of our pianists, and they were recording remotely from each other a piece, and I think it was a piece from a performance called Amelie. And on the bottom, there were 6 of our young men singing the closing number, which was Monty Python's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, which was the closing number by choice because all of the pieces in some way reflected the show's theme of resilience. And so it was about an hour-long show, and the kids did a really wonderful job. It was broadcast online on the 10th and on the 11th, and we even were able to, with the help and flexibility of the wonderful Mary Ellen Duggan, we had the kids show up and be able to watch their own show's opening night, which is something kind of unusual. You don't usually get to see your own opening night, and so here were the kids, and they greatly appreciated the flexibility of the leadership to allow that to happen. And we had really wonderful, leadership by Maura Morrison and Brian Kelly, who arranged the show, and our other musical and theater folks, Olivia and Eric Vincent as well. So bravo to those kids and those adults for putting on a really wonderful show that I think would have been really hard to even fathom a year ago, but they did it. Additionally, we have winter athletics started this week on Monday, and here's just an image here, kind of a rotating image of our 10th grade boys basketball players participating. Many thanks to Mike Masserino and our coaches for implementing lots and lots of protocols and procedures to make sure students are safe and apart from each other when they're not in drills, that they're wearing masks entirely, that our locker rooms are shut down, and there are many iterations of these kind of procedures, and that you more than you can really even imagine. And this all comes on the heels of a very successful fall season. I got many parents and students sharing their appreciation for the hard work that Mr. Masserino did, along with our coaches, to make sure that fall sports happened, and that they happened safely. And so we're moving on to the winter sports, which includes basketball for both boys and girls, ice hockey for both the boys and girls, winter gymnastics, winter swimming and diving, and then also alpine ski. So that started on Monday, and the games start up in January. And then I just wanted to make a note, we're always really, our primary focus is on teaching and learning. And again, we have teachers who are reinventing ways to make learning happen despite the challenges they face. And so one of the trend lines we're seeing is teachers inviting people into their classroom, into their Zoom classrooms, to just expand the kind of to increase engagement for students, because everybody loves hearing from an outside presenter. And so just 3 that I'm aware of, and then there are many others that I was not even able to capture here. DECA pulled off a really wonderful networking night that featured more than 15 guests, including the keynote speaker Jeff Hoffman, who's the chairman of the board of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. This week on Monday, we had an author, Michael Finkel, who wrote The Stranger in the Woods, which is a book I highly suggest. I read it several years ago. It's about, if you recall in the news, the hermit in Maine who had been kind of like almost like a ghost presence in an area in Maine until he was caught. So Mr. Finkel wrote that book. He is actually Deb Saltzman's cousin, and he presented on his writing to the kids. And here in that image on the right-hand side, he's showing a clothespin that was retrieved from the location where this hermit lived, and that he had gone to the lengths of painting it green to ensure that he was not discovered. Just this afternoon, in fact, I think Jamie Hart, who's a graduate of ours and son of son or daughter, I'm not actually sure about that, I'm sorry, of our math teacher Nancy Hart, presented to students on that person is a postdoctoral researcher at Yale, and discussed using an electron microscope to look at materials on an atomic level. That's not the kind of expertise we are typically able to provide to our students, but here in a Zoom environment, we've been able to. So that has been a really wonderful, added benefit, a benefit that has emerged out of necessity by some of our more inventive teachers who have shown a great deal of resourcefulness to keep kids engaged. So I wanted to move on to talk about the student survey, a student survey we conducted right before Thanksgiving that has given us a real glimpse into what the experience kids are having in their school day, whether it be remote on a remote Monday, whether it be in person, or the remote days when they're home while their in-person peers are in school. I pulled this quote because I think it kind of captures how kids feel, just generally speaking. This was a freshman who shared that it's been kind of hard going into high school this way, but I'm okay with it for the most part because we're in a pandemic, so I guess it's expected. I don't mean to be glib. I think that does capture how many of our respondents felt, that they felt like this is not ideal. I'm doing my best as a student. My teachers are doing their best as well. There are things that we can refine and improve a little bit, but everybody's doing an excellent job given the challenges that we've been dealt. I will say that in my first pass through the data, what seems clear to me is that our base model of hybrid instruction is working well and will require no massive overhauls. So the students are indicating that they're engaged, they're satisfied. Generally speaking, nothing's perfect, of course, and I want to make sure you understand that. But nothing about our schedule suggests that they're or how we're coming at education in our building and when they're remote would require a massive change. So I have asked Tim McDonald, who's our assistant principal. He's in the room here to maybe kind of jump in at any point. Tim helped me unpack some of this data, and certainly in a few slides from now, Tim had looked at some of the themes for our qualitative, like open responses, that gave us a glimpse into how kids are thinking about our instructional model. So we had 643 students participate in the survey. It was a nearly even representation of all 4 grades, and this was done over a period of time wherever it worked best in our period 5 teachers in the lead up to Thanksgiving. So a few of our takeaways, it's a pretty dense data set, so I'm just going to give you, and this is all condensed into that executive summary that I think is in the school committee packet. So here are some of our learnings. One is that in advance of this survey, we were only speculating and kind of using informed speculation on what students were doing globally on their remote school days, because teachers have some autonomy, or a great deal of autonomy, and how that results in students' day. We now have learned a lot more about. So how much time do they spend on schoolwork is something we came to understand. And schoolwork we characterize as anything from live instruction to asynchronous work to what more conventionally would be thought of as homework. And for the most part, we have students doing 3 to 4 hours of schoolwork on those remote days. It's really a 5-hour day, but most kids are doing 5 to 6 hours, and many are doing 6 to 7 hours, and some students are doing as many as 7 or more hours. A small percentage are doing less than 3 hours, which I don't know how that's happening, and I don't know how they're being successful, but that's something we're going to have to learn a little bit more about. I dug into the data a little bit to see who are doing our 7+ hour days, and interestingly, what I found out is that breaks out where our 9th graders and 12th graders are more likely to have longer days than our 10th and 11th graders. I'm not entirely sure why that is. This is new data for us, and so our school-based leadership team is going to help me unpack this and to learn a little bit more about maybe what our hypotheses might be for why those breaks are. I wouldn't say it's significant, massive changes between or differences between our 9th and 12th graders and our 10th and 11th graders, but it was something I picked up on as I was looking at the data. Additionally, we wanted to find out how many of our students' remote days classes are providing some form of live instruction. And this was not a surprise to me. This was about what I would have had guessed is 10 to 11% of our kids are not receiving any live instruction on remote days, but for the most part, kids are getting 1 to 2, with some getting 3 to 4, 5 to 6, or even as many as 7 classes of live instruction on those remote days. And so, what I'm understanding from students is their tolerance for that or appreciation for that, or whether or not that's appealing, really varies by student. Some kids love live streaming, and some kids love having asynchronous work to work on at their own pace at a time that works for them. I sat for lunch one day with students and said, "Can you tell me about what your remote learning day was?" Because if I was sitting with them for lunch, they were in an in-person day. That meant the day before they were remote. And one kid said, "I had a ton of live instruction classes." And I said, "Well, how'd that go?" And then she said, "It was great. I really liked it." And the girl sitting next to her said, "I had none." And she really liked that too. So that model, I think, and I think the inverse might be true for a student who doesn't want to spend a huge amount of screen time on their remote day. Lots of live instruction might not be a great fit for them. And for a student who really requires that kind of direct instruction and engagement with the teacher to stay engaged, that a day where you have minimal live teaching might be a challenge. I'm just trying to see if maybe I can pause. I've been talking very quickly and dumping a lot of data in front of you. I can keep moving and maybe take questions at the end, but I did want to come up for air and see if there were any questions people have so far. Okay.
Let me just check and see if there are any questions at this point.
Okay, sure.
Sean,
And I can wait till the end. I just, I didn't want to bulldoze through and prevent conversation.
No, I appreciate it, especially if the question is in one of these slides. Sean,
Sure.
you have a question, and then Chris
Yep.
Covino.
Sure, thanks. So this data is interesting, particularly in light of the state's new looking at time requirements that students are getting their in-person or synchronous time requirements. Do you know, generally looking at this and knowing your schedule, do you think the high school is going to meet the new state the new state regulations that just were voted, what was it, Tuesday, maybe Monday?
Yes, we Greg and I looked at that data, and I think what's happening is we have enough live teaching happening on those remote days that it puts us over by plenty. So I think if you look at it, as for a typical student, that typical student is in that longest bar there, and that puts us at as many as 40 to 80 minutes, really, a day of live instruction on those remote days, and that puts us way in good shape for that kind of
great,
what is really new information for us as a requirement. But we were confident we were doing a good job anyway, and it just allowed us, I think it was a healthy analysis of what to ensure that what we're doing is the right thing for kids. And I was glad to have this data, because it would have been really speculative without it.
Yeah, terrific, thanks.
Principal Bevan, or for Greg.
Sure.
For those of us that didn't hear that update that was voted on Tuesday, could you give us some of that information, what that is?
Sure. So the Commissioner of Education implemented structured learning time for districts across the Commonwealth. And basically districts who are in a standalone remote program have to have 40 hours of synchronous learning happening across a 2-week period. And for those districts in a hybrid model, it's 35 hours across a 2-week period. So basically the purpose of the standard structured learning time really was to make sure kids are connecting with adults. I would say that we do that well. And I would argue that, yes, we do meet the structured learning time requirements, but it's more about quality than quantity. And it's really looking about making sure our students are connected to adults in these models. So, some new standards, those were brand new. The Board of Education voted those on Tuesday. There are emergency regulations. The Board of Education will be looking at those again in February, and we'll be seeking public comment on those leading up to that February meeting.
Okay, thanks for the update, Greg. Chris Covino has a question.
All right, thanks, Joan. First, I think teachers are probably the best arbiters of the best ways to present their content. I think that you really can trust the professional judgment of teachers, because I know that there's been some question about the fact that some teachers are not necessarily providing live instruction while others are. But I really do think that it is kind of the teacher's professional judgment that determines whether or not a particular type of content is best taught a certain way. So to kind of piggyback on what I just said, my question is simply, do all the teachers that want to be able to live stream have access to all the equipment that they need to do so? That's really what my question is there.
Yes, I believe so, Chris. I don't think there's any barriers to any teacher who would like to live stream to doing so. So I bought some microphones that should have helped capture voices from the classroom, so that anybody who wanted to do that would do that. I handed out 42 of those on the first day of school, and they went out really quickly. And I think there are teachers who are doing it without even those devices. We have teachers who are doing pretty elaborate setups. We have one teacher who, at least at the beginning of the year, and I don't know if he's continued with this, had a setup where he was projecting his Zoom classroom to the back of the room. He had basically 2 LCD projectors, one projecting the lesson to the front of the room and one projecting the Zoom classroom to the back wall, so he could stand in front of the room, see his in-person students as they are sitting there in front of him, but also see a room full of Zoom faces in that same kind of up against the wall, and any student raising a hand, either in person or digitally, virtually, he could interact with them, and everybody was looking at the same, LCD projected lesson on the front board, and the kids at home were looking at that on their screens. That's a pretty elaborate setup that requires twice the amount of LCD projection that we really afford teachers, but that was getting good results from what I saw. And so you have everywhere from that very elaborate setup to teachers who are very happy with having students work entirely asynchronously, because they want to dedicate their full attention to the students in the room in front of them. That was really a line of thinking we talked a lot about with Stephanie Reinhorn. Of course, Stephanie's in the room, to really spend time thinking, if your kids are here in front of you, you want to dedicate as much energy to them while they're there, and not split that energy trying to manage technology for the virtual learners who could simultaneously be doing a lesson at home that would be just as well received asynchronously.
Great, thank you very much, Sean. I would also just like to say that I want to give as much appreciation as possible to all those teachers that are working really hard to juggle um, everything that's being expected from them, not just from a social emotional standpoint, but also from an academics, either academic or specialist planning standpoint. There's certainly a lot that goes into that, and I know that stress levels are high, and I think they need to hear that it is in fact genuinely appreciated what it is that they're pulling off. So kudos to them, and thank you very much for your support as well.
Yeah, thank you. Our teachers have done an outstanding job this year. I haven't been a teacher in a while, and I can only imagine how much preparation it takes to go into teaching really two simultaneous lessons. And some people are doing it simultaneously, kind of in person in this live streamed way, and other people are just dedicating that preparation and planning out something asynchronous for the other kids to do. And then we have some people who are doing a mix of both. So they might start a class where they have the class kind of working together in this collaborative way that melds the in-person students and the remote students, and then they'll break midway through the class into some new something different. That's this is the glimpse we've achieved, which is not surprising. Nothing stood out to me as being shocking, and the feedback we're getting from kids is this kind of mix is working, generally speaking, for them. I think kids would ideally be everybody in here fully in person in a way that is conventional. Teachers would love that too if it were safe to do so. So I think we're really itching to get back to what we know we do really well, and I think it's given kids a real appreciation for how much they like being physically here in school, seeing each other, socializing, but also seeing their teachers. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the qualitative data. I'm sorry, I'm moving. My apologies.
Oh, that's good. No, Principal Bevan, I want to thank you for taking the school committee members' questions midstream. I found it to be very beneficial. And seeing that there aren't any other questions, if you'd like to continue with your presentation.
Of course. One of the things we prioritized heavily in our PD at the beginning of the year was that it was going to be critically important that teachers communicate skillfully and clearly with students about what their expectations are going to be. And we talked a lot about how on Mondays that will be a period of time where it's important that teachers have face-to-face contact virtually with students, and that they use that time to lay out the plan for the week so students can leave their Mondays knowing what days they have to arrive in person, in virtual settings, and what the expectations are going to be, and that teachers are going to show enthusiasm for the work that was going to be to come. And also on those Mondays, that was an opportunity to try to cohere the group of students. What we're hearing from students is that teachers are using Canvas, which I think everybody is aware is a very powerful platform for organizing learning, and our teachers are using it to great effect. We'll just share with you that in my former district, Canvas was like the gold standard, and we had a few very high performing power user teachers use Canvas, and here we are in our building and every teacher uses Canvas, and there's a lot of features. It's a very feature-rich platform, and we have a lot of teachers using it to great effect. And here I just share this was a question because I was curious, did all that Canvas training work? Are teachers using Canvas well? And I think you can see here the vast majority, 66% are saying that they're using it well, and a lot of kids are even saying they're using it very well. So that's a total of 86% or almost 87% of our kids saying our communication is working well. So credit to the teachers for their hard work in learning that platform and then employing it to great effect. As a bottom line, I just wanted to find out, how do you like it? Kids, how's it going for you? And I stop kids every day. I ask them, how are you doing and how's it going for you? That's not a terribly scientific way to come at it, but this gives you a little bit more information. So here you get a sense for how our students are just basically how satisfied they are with each of our three models. So just a reminder, on Mondays, we're fully remote, and teachers have all of their kids all in kind of one group, both cohorts in a virtual setting. And for every class, that really should be have some form of direct instruction in that group. On the different cohorts, they have in-person days, and then on the non-in-person days, they're working remotely. So they're by far and away, and it's not even close, the kids really love in-person instruction. And I had a conversation with a kid. In fact, today I said, "Are you ready for a snow day tomorrow?" And she said, well, she was in person, but she said she would be happy to come into school anyway. They are kind of have developed an appreciation, many kids, for the in-person instruction in a way that, and this is not the only time I heard it this week, where kids were kind of bummed that they might be snowed out for Thursday. And that's not the kind of thing high school educators are used to hearing over time. And so I was happy to hear. So that's what you see for the in-person instruction bars there in that middle piece. That the red and the blue combined together really do paint a picture for kids being pretty pleased with how things are going for the in-person instruction. If you look closely at the outer bars here, one is the remote Monday classes and the remote classes that are not Mondays. The orange, green, and purple bars really are pretty similar. So the dissatisfied customers are pretty dissatisfied uniformly with remote instruction, but the kids on the remote classes that are not Mondays, those are the cohort-specific remote days. You're getting a higher level of satisfaction in that blue, represented in that blue bar. And I asked some kids to help me understand what that data is telling me, and they said there's kind of an element of not choice wouldn't be the right word, but it's kind of varied on those days. So if they have their first two classes and they're fully asynchronous, they can sleep a little bit later. They might have a live stream class, they attend that, and then they complete some work. So there's a level of independence that and a lack of structure that actually works, I think, really well. On the flip side, on the left-hand side for remote Monday classes, kids are generally satisfied with that. And I asked kids about that, and they said the high level of structure for that at least lets them remain really organized. And they also like sleeping until 8 o'clock. So our Mondays start at 8 o'clock. Our Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays start at 7:20. So generally speaking, I was happy to see that kids, I think there's a kind of a sense of understanding that this is not the model that they prefer, but within the model that's not the preference, it's working for them. So those were good to see. And then we have the qualitative results. We asked, just flat out asked, and one of the questions I put in there was, what's something you want us to know about how you're feeling about school so far? And Tim, you're welcome to jump in here. Tim McDonald is one of our assistant principals, and he read through all of this with me and really condensed some of it. So I don't know, Tim, if you have any sharings here. I bullet pointed a few of them.
Yeah, sure. So in this particular question, where students were asked what would they like the staff to know about this year so far, it definitely varied. But common themes were that they did feel that their teachers were very clear with their expectations. They were getting a lot of good information from tools like Canvas. There was a theme that students found remote day work or work that they did on their own to a point to be stressful and overwhelming. And in-person days, because as you can imagine, I think navigating this kind of strange year and trying to make sure that teachers are doing a good job of assessing students' knowledge, they find that their in-person days are filled with assessments. So they feel over-tested in the in-person days, overworked in the other days, and which is interesting when you see the earlier responses in terms of how satisfied they are with the different modes. But this is just what they're reporting in terms of how they're feeling personally.
Yeah, so some of the points we pulled out, and these lines up here are just the voice of kids sharing how they feel. It has been stressful and very weird. Kids, of course, really love the social benefits and the social aspects of high school, and some of that is missing. Much of that is missing in the remote environment. And even when they're here, the social aspects of school are diminished considerably. We make sure they're far enough apart, and all the other mitigation strategies that we've employed, of course. Kids talked a bit about how they're excited to come into school, even if it's just 2 days a week. And they learn a lot more that way. So kids have shared with me, and when I showed them some of this data, that this was consistent with how they felt, is that when they're there and they're in person and they're hearing from their teachers and they're able to ask questions in real time, that's really something that they appreciate. That bottom bullet point, I think, is probably not as this was a major takeaway, is that kids, to Tim's point, when they're here in person, teachers are doing a lot of assessment when they're here. So finding a way to do testing in a secure way is difficult to do when kids are in their homes, and it requires really innovative, flexible thinking on teachers' parts. And so many of them are doing, I think, what comes naturally to teachers, is to say, we'll teach them through these lessons and prepare them, and then on Friday we'll have we'll quiz them on it, because they're going to be here, and we can make sure that for a single kid in a single class isn't a big deal. But if the whole building makes that same decision over and over again, that compounds on a student, and they come into a Friday full of exams when they're there for in-person instruction in a way that they really appreciate in a way, but when a lot of that time is spent in doing assessments, that's a challenge. There is also the practical reality. Teachers want to find out if kids have mastery over what they've been taught, and doing that, assessing that in a new way, is something that we haven't truly confronted, and I think we're going to have to look at. Okay. This one, and I think this is consistent with some of the data we saw earlier. The workload for kids, especially in rigorous course loads, can be a challenge. And if you spend 7 hours in some synchronous direct instruction, you're spending 7 hours staring at a computer, and that's not the most fun way to spend a day. And on Mondays, all those are in Zoom. That day is a day full of Zoom courses, Zoom kind of touch points for teachers, even though some of them do 20 minutes or 10 minutes or the full 40 minutes. That's a lot of computer screen time. So our next steps, and Tim and I are going to be doing this tomorrow morning, is sharing some of these learnings with the school-based leadership team, and to ask them to identify some of the highest leverage department-specific takeaways, to figure out, are there things we can learn from this about what's working, and maybe what can be refined or adjusted a bit to learn from this data. And we had, one of the questions we asked was for the students, who's a teacher who is employing really exciting and engaging strategies you might want to we can learn from, because I'm a principal and I've never taught in this environment. Our teachers are more expert in this than I am, and so it's important to find out who's doing it really well. Happily, I would, and I don't know, Tim, I don't know if this was a trend you saw. There must have been 40 different teacher names, or maybe 50 teacher names in that singular question response. So we have a very wide number, a nice cross section of teachers who are employing different things that kids are identifying for us as being effective, and that was really great to see. It wasn't just 5 superstars who were doing really extraordinary things. I think it's nearly all teachers are doing something that is exciting and interesting, and so we have a well of expertise out there that we can go and find out, from a certain teacher, what is it that you're doing that kids really enjoy.
Right. And Sean, another interesting question that you had on the survey was what tools or practices the students would like to see the teachers use more, and it kind of shows one of the things we're forced into this year in terms of like learning new technology to integrate into a blending learning model. They mentioned a few different tools like Quizlet. They do like Zoom for breakout room, that use when teachers use that and break from whole class discussions to breakout rooms for smaller groups. And then they all do, a lot of students do appreciate Canvas and how that's been used as a central way to communicate through the teachers. So I think the hope and the expectation is that students, by kind of needing to use those tools, are going to find that it's going to facilitate learning going forward as well.
Yeah, and I do want to put in a plug for Julie Doyle and the tech team. First, for training teachers, they really they were prepared, I think, as best as you can. But also, we took some data in early on from teachers about what platform we could invest in that would be the best one for the most kids, the most teachers, and they identified something called Nearpod. And with Greg's help and support, we were able to to bring that into the school and offer that to every teacher at a cost that actually was I think manageable, and I think we're getting a lot of value out of that investment. So Nearpod is something kids seem to that they identified several times in that question. So I think yeah. So are there any questions about this data and what we're going to do with it?
Principal Bevan, I don't see any questions right now.
Right.
But going through Greg, and Greg, if we have, can I ask, with your permission, for Principal Bevan, if he could send this as a link to the school committee members, because we have 3 members tonight that had other commitments that had to leave, and I'm sure that they've asked questions about this and they would be very interested. So, Greg, would it be possible?
Of course.
Yep.
Okay.
But just comment that, the student data is essential as we evaluate, how the learning environment's impacting their experience. We also have educator data and family data. So we'll be looking at if there's any patterns and trends across the 3 groups to see if, again, from a parent perspective, from an educator perspective, and a student perspective, are there really patterns and trends and high yield changes that we can make to really benefit students.
Yeah, I think this, Principal Bevan, I think this survey is very valuable. Are you planning on doing it again sometime to see if anything changes in how the students are feeling as we go midterm, you get into the February, March, April timeframe?
I hadn't really thought of that, and maybe that would have been a third bullet here for the next steps, which is to have a period of trying to share out what our learnings are, and then have teachers make some subtle adjustments and get more feedback, and then try it again. I think I'm a firm believer in using kind of the same base questions, and then you can see growth over time. I could see doing that in the early spring could be valuable. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think the data is very important, and you're getting, a viewpoint of the students, because these are anonymous, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They're anonymous, and I think it's good. I mean, this is all new territory for all of us, and
Right.
It's data that's going to be important if we ever go through something like this again, or just to see how the students are doing and giving them a voice. And I was also pleased to hear that you sat down and you talked to the students. You made that connection to them. And you wanted to know, okay, instead of just saying, okay, why is this column low, or why do they feel that way? Okay, well, it's only 10%, big deal. It is a big deal if it's 10%. If it's 5%, it is, because you want to hit and reach all the students. So I applaud you for taking that extra time of reaching out to those students and to see why they felt that some of the students did feel that way. So thank you very, very much.
Well, you're welcome. And one of the things I will finally share is there is a not insignificant number of kids who feel like the pace, as unusual as this year is, the pace is slowed down considerably. So we have 10 minutes of passing time instead of 5 in between classes. And now there's single direction hallways. So that was by design so that they could get where they need to get. But it allows kids to get where they need to get with without having to rush. I think the amount of emphasis we place on athletics is always high, but this year I think some of that pressure was reduced because there were just fewer games. I think a greater level of understanding of coaches and kind of a less lowered intensity for state tournaments and things. So I think there were a combination of factors that came together where, even though we're in a very high stress environment, that some of the choices we made to reduce stress for kids, I think we're hearing that kids think the pace is a little bit more agreeable. I think they're not going to love going back to 5 minutes of passing time someday. I think they'd love to have 10 minutes of passing time forever. I'm not sure I can do that and still keep my job with and meet our minutes on learning requirements. In fact, I know we cannot. But I think there are things that they have enjoyed about it almost by accident.
And I think another good barometer of what a good job that you are doing, along with your assistant principals and your staff, is the barometer that the student gave to you that they didn't want a snow day.
Yes, right. Yeah.
So,
So
their skis or their cross country, they're going to go through the streets of Northborough and Southborough
yeah.
and get there through it with 18 inches of snow. So.
Yeah, it's not something you hear a lot, and it was funny to hear a kid say it, but it was not terribly surprising. It was surprising, but it made sense when I heard it. Yeah.
Did.
Well, thank you.
Okay, and I don't see any questions or comments from any board members. So if you'd like to continue on,
Sure.
The MCAS update.
Sure. So I'm going to pitch it over to Andy McGowan, who's one of our other wonderful assistant principals. And Andy's going to tell us a little bit about MCAS changes.
Yeah, good evening. So there's been some changes this year. DESE has announced that, originally announced that January, May, and June would be the 3 tests for MCAS, January being the class of 2021, class of 2022, May being the class of 2023, and June being the class of 2024. Recently, this past week on December 7th anyways, the commissioner announced that the January test was going to be postponed and moved back till later in the year, not giving a specific time frame when that would take place. So you can see from the slide just kind of when those tests will be right now. There's still January testing for our current seniors who need to make it up. So transfer students or students that just need to take it again or have to take it for the first time. And then later in the spring, we'll have the other tests. So that's really the kind of the bulk of the update that the state has provided us guidance on at this time, and more information will be following in the future. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I just have one question. Did I read somewhere where one of the tests was going to be printed and not on laptops?
So originally the January test, we had the option to have it printed paper-based test or computer-based test, and we were looking at exploring the paper-based option for that January test. So that, but right now, as far as I know, the May test and June test are computer-based.
They are.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I don't see any questions from any of the board members.
Okay.
So then next is the mascot study group.
Sure, and there are several members from the study group who attended our first meeting last week and are members of the study group. So this is not news to them, and so they're welcome, of course, to share. We had our first meeting on December 9th, which was last, and that was really a table setting meeting to establish what the norms of the group were going to be, to establish what our mission was, which is to dig into this and look closely at this issue, and then to provide a recommendation to the school committee later in the spring. And then we talked about a timeline that was agreeable to meet those demands. What was really, really a wonderful moment in this meeting was to hear about the Algonquin, the history of Algonquin Regional High School, and a major kudos going to John Barry, who's a social studies teacher for us, and Kim Honey, who is our librarian, who walked through an overview of our history and how we arrived at the Tomahawk, and some movements that have been undertaken over time to perhaps retire the Tomahawk. And then we discussed how each one of the stakeholders brings some perspectives to the group. And the group is comprised of, as you might recall, when this was discussed a few months ago, we have several students. We have a member of the faith community. We have members of the Coalition for Equity. We have members of the school committee. We have people who have multiple roles, school committee members who are Coalition for Equity members. We have people who are parents and a booster, a member of the boosters. We have alums and athletic director. That's the same person in Mike Masserino. So people all bring different perspectives to this work. and that's valuable. And I think we had a lot of really great conversations. And by the end, I think people gained an appreciation for our history, and we identified some pathways to learning more about how our tomahawk might, how it's perceived, and we're beginning work I'll tell you about in a moment. In that historical overview, I'll just share some images with you. We looked at some images from on the left-hand side. That's the, I think, the 1949 yearbook from the Peters High School, which was in Southborough. That was the high school in Southborough that was combined with Northborough High School, and that's the yearbook from the last yearbook of Northborough High School before it was merged. And so we talked about how the two communities, the two towns, merged two high schools together, and that was kind of a big moment for our area, and of course was that's where our high school emerged from. In that conversation, we talked about how the Northborough High School has had their own mascot that predated the tomahawk, and that was the Mounties. That was news to many of us, including myself. The principal of the high school had no idea, so that was something worth noting, and perhaps a little bit trivial, but I think it underscored kind of a deeper appreciation for our history. And then we looked at some photographs. This I only bring to your attention because this was from our first yearbook, and this was the first time you see Algonquin Regional High School on a lot of our athletics uniforms, and it appears that the mascot itself was not emphasized heavily as part of our athletics uniforms, and that is something that emerged over time. So that was something we talked about in the historical overview. Okay. The next steps, just to share with you, tomorrow I'm meeting with a subcommittee of individuals, 2 students and 2 of the adults and myself are going to identify some resources that we're going to share back out to the larger group to ask them to read and to view. Some of them might be videos, but some of them might be articles, to gain a deeper understanding of the impact of Native American mascots as choices for schools, and what that does and how it's perceived by Native members of their Native American community. So we'll be meeting monthly, January, February, and March, with a target date of providing a recommendation to the school committee on April 28th. In between those meetings, we agreed that there will be probably working groups and other subcommittee groups to complete some work in between those time periods. Okay, I think any questions about the work of the mascot study group?
I don't see any questions right now from board members, but I'd like to thank you for taking this charge that we came up with, I think in October, and or I think it was October, and the committee agreed to do it. And I'd like to thank the school committee members for their involvement into this. And that was really interesting history to see about even Northborough and Southborough before the jointure, and what their yearbooks were. So I'd like to thank you for this, and I think you're doing great work. And it would be interesting if you could share some of those resources with us.
Sure.
Send us a link, because I would like to, also be aware of some of the findings that you're coming up with before you go into the step of, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, and the finding your recommendation in April. So thank you very much. And please thank all those members and the students for their involvement. And you said
Yes, I will. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. You said there was a person of faith. So who is serving on that in that role?
We have Cantor Adelman, who I have to ask Superintendent Martineau how she became involved in our group, because he tagged her into us, and she was a real wonderful contributor, and was, I would characterize her as really intellectually curious and engaged by the work.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Please thank all the members for all their hard work.
Well, yeah, they're working very hard, and I will say particularly outstanding work by our kids. We have teenagers in there, and they're in with lots of adults talking about this really important topic, and they grew comfortable, and appropriately so, and shared a lot of really important takeaways and how they're feeling, and
a very cohesive group, and it's good that people can listen and can disagree and agree at the same time. But value everybody's opinion, which is wonderful. It really is.
Yeah, and I will send along to the school committee, Superintendent Marno. Maybe if you can help me with this, I'm really eager to make sure we're transparent about this process and communicating everything that is studied and looked at, and publishing our agenda and our slides and everything, so that anybody who wants to follow along, whether or not they're a student or a parent or just a community member or an alum, that's going to be important, that people are understanding of this work, so that there's no sense that this is that there's no curiosity, that is there's no question about how the work is being completed and how we're making these decisions.
Yeah, because I see that any information that we get as a school committee member will help us. When you come with a recommendation, we will be just as educated as you are and as your board members, and therefore we can be, it will help us to endorse your recommendation, I think, a lot better, instead of spending a lot of time on questions.
Of course. Yeah.
So
can I just make a couple comments? First, I just want to thank the leadership team. Actually, Kathleen Howland has a question, so I'll hold my comments until all the committee members have had a chance to provide input.
Are you sure, Greg?
Mm-hmm.
I guess he is. Okay, Kathleen Howland, your question or comment.
Yes, I'd like to request that when the information comes on the history of the school, that it also come with a picture of the mascot. I was not able to find one online, and I've not seen it. And so it makes it difficult to know what we're referencing. And I'm wondering, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to make that Thursday night meeting, as I had a conflict, but I'm also interested in whether the Historical Society is involved in this at all, so that there would be a permanent housing to the information.
So Kim Honey, our librarian, has reached out to both the Historical Society in Northborough and Southborough. She hasn't heard back. I will ask her maybe to reach back out to find out. I'm sure they have resources that we don't entirely have access to. What has been very helpful to us as a primary source is our many yearbooks do give a good glimpse into what what kids were like at that time, and then additionally, we have people in our community who still remember that transition, and also remember times in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s when we've had a kind of periods of time where this issue has been examined.
Thank you.
Okay, I will now turn it over to Greg Martineau. There aren't any other questions from board members right now.
Sure. I just want to thank the high school leadership team, so Kathy, Tim, Andy, and Sean, for all of their work over the past, I would say, 6 months. And I also want to just acknowledge their student-centered approach. Every time we have conversations, it's really about the students at Algonquin. They're extremely supportive of the faculty and staff, and really trying to lead with empathy. And then I also just want to share that, Sean has entered this organization in a pandemic, having to take on this challenge of looking at the mascot. So those in any one career are usually two significant events, and Sean has been presented with those both as he's begun his tenure here in Northborough, Southborough. So I just want to thank him for his leadership and the leadership of the high school team.
Thank you, Greg. It's been an honor, and I'm really thrilled to be here.
We're thrilled to have you as the leadership at Algonquin. Thank you. Mr. Martineau, I'll turn the agenda back to you, since we're still under superintendent's report to the committee, and I don't see any other hands raised from any other members for questions, and we're on to under superintendent's report to the committee, enrollments.
In your packet, you have the enrollments as of December 10th, 2020. And since the last data set that was provided, that there has been an increase of 2 students. So enrollment has remained very steady at this point in time. Also in your packet is the FY21 monthly general fund expenditure report. and Becky Pellegrino will provide an overview as well as an update on the COVID-19 financial impact. And Keith Lavoie and Becky will speak to the food services program at this point in time.
So good evening. As you can see by the monthly general fund expenditure report, we have $536,473 remaining on the bottom line, which represents 2.22% of the FY21 budget. In comparing this report to what we had last year, at the same time, we had $360,501 or 1.52% remaining. We are being cautious at this time with our spending as we realize that the grants are expiring at the end of this month. And so many of the expenses that have been charged to the grant will now be incurred on the operational budget. And so at this point in time, I would like to present the COVID-19 financial impact report.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Becky, can we take a vote by the committee?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I just don't want it to get lost. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the FY21 monthly general fund expenditure report as of November 30th, 2020 until audited.
So moved. Paul Desmond.
Moved by Paul Desmond, seconded
Sean.
by Sean O'Shea. Okay, thank you. Roll call vote. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to the roll call vote. Karen Ayers?
Yes.
Paul Bucca? Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Chris Covino? Yes. Paul Desmond?
Yes.
Kathleen Highland? Sean O'Shea?
Yes.
Kathleen Patchko?
Yes.
And myself and Kathleen, I heard you, Highland, correct? Yes? Okay, it passes unanimous. Thank you very much. Sorry, Becky.
No, I almost asked you if you wanted to do that. We're anticipating many of the grant funds that have been awarded to the district expiring at the end of this month. The biggest one being the school reopening grant, which represents $314,000. One new item that I wanted to point out that I've included on this sheet is Greg mentioned that the governor had signed the FY21 budget last week. There is a new yet to be named grant that is included in that. We are anticipating approximately $44,000 from that grant. The way that this is being calculated is based off of our foundation enrollment. It would be $25 per student and then $75 per low income student enrolled at the regional high school. So that was some welcome news. In terms of the expenses, we are tracking right along where we anticipated in some of the line items, and then in some other line items, we are going to be making some adjustments. Our substitute line item has not come in at the amount that we had initially anticipated. So you can see that as of November 30th, we have expended about $13,000 in teacher substitutes for that 2-month period, really. We also have expended more in our PPE. We had thought we would expend about $20,000 for this full school year, and we've already expended $28,000. So my snow day project for tomorrow is to go through this grant and to work out these lines and make adjustments accordingly, and so that we can make sure that the funds are being expended on those areas where we have actually seen some overages. I also want to talk about food services, as Greg had mentioned, and you can see that we've done some projections for the year and that we are projecting approximately $144,000 loss if we were to continue our operations the way that they are currently going. And just to give you a little bit of a breakdown about our food services program, this year, I think I've mentioned that all of our students are receiving free lunch, and we are being reimbursed from the USDA for lunch, and we are also able to provide a breakfast as well. So that is really the main source of our revenue for the food services program. As of November 30th, we have served 10,853 lunches and 3,366 breakfasts. We just started the breakfast. I believe it was in November that we started the breakfast program, so that is just getting off the ground. And we've also been allowed to start to offer some of our a la carte offerings. They're very limited based on the regulations, but we are looking at some new offerings, and Keith can get into those a little bit later. You will notice our year-to-date total right now is negative $66,000, just about $67,000. And we are trending at a lower amount where we need to serve 9,608 meals per month. And over the course of 2 months, we served 10,853. So we are doing considerably lower numbers for our lunch program than we've seen historically. So what Keith and Diane Kofer, the manager at the high school, and Greg and I have done is we've sat down and we've come up with a plan for how are we going to address this shortfall. So what we have determined to do is to take some money from the food service revolving account. At the beginning of fiscal year 21, we had $80,096 in that account. So by using a portion of that towards this deficit, that will be helpful. We've also allocated $50,000 in our operational budget towards food services. And we are also looking at our staff. And so this is the conversation that we want to have tonight, because as you could see on this slide, that the largest expense that we really have is our salaries when it comes to food service. Diane does a great job in terms of looking at her expenses and making sure that she is preparing meals that are as low cost as possible. And she also utilizes many of the programs that the government offers. We also were informed last week of another CVRF grant, and this was for the school meals program. And this funding was based on the number of meals that were served from April of 2020 through December of 2020. They needed to estimate for this current month that we're in, but the other months were the actual numbers of meals served. And so you can see, though, it was a very small amount of money that came through, and that was for $3,042. So by taking those steps, we feel that we will be able to make up the shortfall. And Keith, I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to add.
Absolutely. So I did want to give Diane Kofer and team a lot of credit. You know, coming into the school year, there was a lot of uncertainty, and they did an admirable job of having a safe environment for the students to eat their food and to serve it in the appropriate ways. Now that we have looked at it closely, participation is down. When you look at the average number of meals that she would be doing with, a full 1,400 students compared to the 650 that are there on a daily basis between Tuesday and Friday, those percentages are down slightly. A variety of different reasons can be considered for that. The principals have been very helpful in trying to bolster participation. It just simply isn't there at this point. So we are continuing to try to be creative. Diane has tried to explore social media avenues to bolster participation and other methods as well. One thing that Becky did mention is bringing back different a la carte items. They are carefully regulated due to the spacing issues and serving constraints that we're under. But one thing we might be bringing back shortly is pizza. Pizza was a hot item for the high school, and it might be something that will bolster participation in a lot of different areas. But we are, Diane, really looking at her expenses everything from packaging materials to the different foods that we're serving. We're trying to benefit greatly from the government programs as much as possible, programs, and we are doing things with a high level of thought in mind. So, that coupled with this plan, I hope that we will stabilize the program so that continue to remain viable for the remainder of the school year. Greg, I didn't know if there was anything else that you wanted to add in relation to.
I would just echo, it's not out of a lack of effort that you have a shortfall. When you have 700 less students in your building a day, it significantly impacts the number of lunches you serve. So it's basically a math equation. They are doing everything they can to try to make up this shortfall. But the bottom line is the primary expense is staffing. And, we can't be having this conversation in May that there's this deficit. We really need to be proactive in thinking about what can we do now to try to make sure that, again, we don't end the year in a deficit. So Heather's had some conversations. We are looking at staffing and seeing, what reductions we can make. And also Heather has been having conversations around where can we redeploy some of the staffing who might be impacted to other areas and other needs that we have throughout our 3 districts.
Are there any other questions or comments from any of the board members? Okay, Kathleen Holland.
I would just say I really appreciate the consideration for redeployment and that sense of loyalty to an employee. It's certainly difficult circumstances in which to find a new job at the turn of the year, through the holidays and things like that. So I just really want to commend you for that, because even though we're looking at a line item, it's a person, it's a family, it's an influence in their communities. So I always want to keep that humanistic, heartfelt concern when I look at a line item like that. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen, for the wonderful comment. And I'd like to thank Keith Lavoie and for Rebecca for doing such a great job on this. I know I asked the questions previously about the free breakfast, and that's now implemented. And I think you've done an yeoman's job in trying to get the numbers to be up, and even the different avenues of social media, trying to get more kids to be involved in this. But Keith, I agree with you. I think if and when you can get pizza on there, that's always something the kids can just grab right away, and and they enjoy that all the time. So you guys are doing the best.
I guess the last thing I would share, and I know Keith says this every time he has a chance, is that lunches are free. It's not too often that lunches are free for everyone. Mm-hmm. And the way the community can help and the way students can help is taking advantage of those free lunches. It sounds counterintuitive, but if they take a free lunch, we benefit. Mm-hmm. So the more free lunches we offer, the less our deficit is. So anything you folks can do to communicate that point, and anything the community can do to make sure kids are taking lunches is helpful.
One thing we've been able to capitalize on now that a lot of the college students are back in town for the holidays is they can come and get free lunches as long as they're under 22 years of age. So these are all conversations I've had with a series of parents. They've asked me, is it okay? And I'm like, absolutely. And it goes the same for preschool age students as well. So we've really gotten that word out, benefited from parents that have kept a pretty strong social media presence, and they've been able to answer questions, and rightfully they've directed it to me or the food services managers for an answer, and we've been able to increase participation that way. But like Greg said, with less kids in the building on each day, the numbers just aren't what they used to be.
Greg, do you think I think you do like a weekly letter home to the parents, maybe when we get back into school in January of 2021, maybe just as a winter reminder, and maybe if the update is there that we can do the pizzas, maybe send something out again to the parents and see if we can get an increase. Maybe in the wintertime, we'll get something.
Maybe we can get some of our Instagram influencers, students influencers, getting the word out to their peers. So absolutely.
Okay.
Maybe if they get their flu shot, they can get a free lunch.
Free cup of hot cocoa, right?
Mary Ellen wanted to include it with the screening. If you come for your COVID screening, you get a free lunch, a grab and go. So, but yeah, actually, we are trying to be creative. Principal Evelyn and I have had conversations about when we need, coverage in different types of situations. Can we have a mobile cart with breakfast sandwiches on it that could do some delivery? So we really are trying to think outside the box of how to do this. When we were having the potential of half days, we're like, maybe we have grab and go sandwiches ready to go before kids leave for the day. So everything is being considered, and whether or not logistically it can happen is, some of the obstacles we have to endure.
Well, you're thinking out of the box, so good luck on that.
All right, so next in the packet is the statement of revenue, and Becky will give a brief overview of the report.
So there aren't many new additions to the November 30th report, but there are a couple of things that I did want to point out. As we had anticipated, the Chapter 70 funding did remain at the same level as FY20 levels. So that number that was included on our anticipated revenue is still good and valid. And we've also received our regional transportation figures. So as you can see, we had anticipated $700,000 for FY21, and our number is $710,233. So we were pretty close to that number, about $10,000 off, but at least it was to the good. So we were very close to our actuals. And this month in December, we have already received our assessments from both communities. So that would be what we were anticipating.
And Becky, do we need to take a vote to accept?
Yes, I think you normally do.
Okay. So may I have a motion to accept the Northborough Southborough Regional School District Statement of Revenue of November 30th, 2020?
So moved.
So moved.
So moved by Kathleen Holland and Paul Desmond. Can you give me a second? Any discussion? Questions? Seeing none, it's a roll call vote. Karen Ayers?
Yes.
Chris Covino?
Yes.
Paul Desmond?
Yes.
Kathleen Holland?
Yes.
Sean O'Shea?
Yes.
Kathleen Pelechko?
Yes.
And myself, yes, it passes unanimous. Thank you.
All right, next in the packet is the capital plan, which is voted on at our November meeting, November 18th. Also in your packet are the budget priorities in the budget calendar, and for time's sake, I will not speak to those, but rather go right into the preliminary budget update, because those are included in the update. So let me share my screen. Hang on. Can you see my screen? No.
Mm-hmm.
You can?
Yes.
Okay.
It's making me cold.
So this was not on purpose, taking this picture and including it in this presentation. So again, I just wanted to give you a brief update of the FY22 budget process and where we are. As you can imagine, typically this time of year, we have more information. With the governor just signing the FY21 budget, has not left a lot of time with the state looking at FY22. So this presentation this evening is really to share with the committee where we are and what our initial thinking is in terms of some of the budget drivers. So one of the new components, or one of the new documents that we're really looking closely at as we think about the budget process, is the statement of vision and mission. Really thinking about making sure that the mission of educate, inspire, and challenge is at the forefront of our work. And then again, the vision, what do we want our students to know and be able to do? And when they leave Algonquin, whether it's work or college or career, we're developing students who are collaborators, critical and creative thinkers, communicators, students who are socially and civically engaged, growth-oriented, and healthy and balanced. So in terms of the budget process, Becky and the finance team did an outstanding job launching the budget for FY22. Principal Bevan and his leadership team and department chairs really spent a lot of time thinking about what goals they wanted to accomplish through the budget process and submitted to the finance team a preliminary budget numbers for the line items that they are responsible for. The finance team put those together as a preliminary budget, and we met with the capital planning subcommittee in November, and also took a first glance at the budget from a high level. Also in November, the school committee approved the FY22 capital plan. So where we are today, typically we would have a preliminary budget presentation to the school committee, but there's too many unknowns at this point to really present a solid budget to the school committee. We've had conversations with Mark Purple, Town Administrator of Southborough, and John Kadare, the Town Administrator of Northborough, and basically they're still waiting to see what their tax receipts are. There are a lot of unknowns in terms of town level that really impact our regional budget. So at this point in time, the plan is to take the preliminary numbers that were submitted to the finance team, to sit down as a leadership team and look at those more closely and develop a preliminary budget to present in January. So I just want to share, I think this is an important place to start with the budget process. As we look back to last year in terms of where we were and where we ended up. So we began with initial budget requests of 7.69% increase over FY20. And our plan was to move forward to the town meetings in both Northborough and Southborough with a 3.31% budget increase. But again, the pandemic had an impact on the fiscal realities of the two communities, and we reduced our budget to a 1.50% budget increase. And I think this is important because we're building our budget on a 1.5% budget, not a 3.31%. So again, it has an impact. When we're looking at the budget reductions that were made in fiscal year 21, I think it does impact the planning for fiscal year 22. We had a reduction of 3.9 full-time equivalents. Staffing, we deferred technology purchases. We deferred classroom textbooks, materials, and general supplies and library materials. And the only thing that happens when you defer is that, again, those get moved forward to the next fiscal year. So it's something that we're looking at very closely. Again, looking closely at Vision 2026 and the work that the committee did, kind of reauthorizing its budget priorities. We have the budget priorities, which are essential for the work that we do as a leadership team to think about what we want to accomplish through this FY22 budget. And many of these are familiar from prior years, but there are also some new budget priorities that help us make decisions. And then in terms of where we are, what are the unknowns currently? The first is contractual obligations. We still have to negotiate with custodians. We negotiated a 1-year contract, so we'll be sitting back down at the table with our custodians to think about their contract for next year and future years. Chapter 70 funding is unknown at this point in time. We had hoped that the Student Opportunity Act would provide some additional funding in terms of transportation out-of-district transportation reimbursement. It looks like that has been moved off the table for fiscal year 22. Health insurance at this point in time is an unknown. Typically, we have a better idea of what our health insurance increases will be in January. We have a meeting with NFP, I believe, Heather and Becky, this upcoming week. And I think we'll get a better sense of what health insurance increases will be from our consultant, NFP, Ken Lombardi. Out of district special education funding. So this is an unknown in terms of circuit breaker reimbursement. COVID-19 2022 expenses. I hope that we don't have COVID related expenses, but I think we can predict that most likely will be some PPE and small expenses as a result of the pandemic and its longer term impacts. And lastly, what we don't know is the town's economic landscape. So, what impact is the pandemic having in terms of tax collections, excise tax collections, real estate, and so forth. So, the towns at this point are waiting for more data so that they can create their fiscal picture for fiscal year 22. And the other thing I just want to share is enrollment. So as we look at FY21, NASDAQ does project declining enrollments over the next 5 years. So if you look at enrollment from FY21 to FY22, we do see a decrease, a significant decrease. And also we're watching this very closely because it ultimately impacts the regional assessments, so the assessments to the town of Northborough and Southborough. So we are keeping an eye on that very closely. And at this point in time, there aren't really any specific numbers that I can share with the committee and the community in terms of percent increase. The goal is to meet with the high school leadership team and the central office leadership team to really sharpen our pencils and present a preliminary budget at the January meeting. So that is my presentation, and at this point in time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions or comments coming from board members right now. No questions or comments, Greg.
Okay, so thank you, and much work to be accomplished in the next several months around the budget. And that is my superintendent's report.
Thank you. Very detailed. Very good. The next item on our agenda is E, old business. None at this time. And then we go to F on the agenda, policy development and or distribution. And under first readings, we have in your packet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that are for the first reading. So if you take a look at those, the policy subcommittee did meet. If you have any corrections to that, send it to Greg or to Cheryl Lepre, and then we will, when the policy subcommittee meets again, then we'll take those additions or corrections that you have into the policies. And any questions on any of those policies? Okay, the next thing under policy is we have a recommendation to rescind, and it was K-180, Citizens Advisory Committee.
So basically, this is a policy that's several decades old, and we do not have a Citizens Advisory Committee. And I think it was the recommendation that this be rescinded.
So do I have a motion
I'll move to rescind that policy, the
Thank you,
citizen
Sean.
advisory.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
Second, Paul Desmond.
Second by Paul Desmond. Any comments or questions on the motion on the table? Seeing none, Then it will be a roll call vote. Karen Ayers,
Yes.
Chris Covino,
Yes.
Paul Desmond,
Yes.
Kathleen Highland,
Yes.
Sean O'Shea,
Yes.
Kathleen Plutchko,
Yes.
and myself, yes, and it passes unanimous. Thank you. And the next item on our agenda is audience sharing. Greg, do we have anyone other than administration and school committee?
We have 2 audience members left, and Dana Voke is one of our audience members. So I do not see any hands raised at this point in time.
Okay, should we give it a couple minutes in case, but no hands raised.
No hands raised.
Thank you. H, personnel. We have distribution of personnel report in our packet. Greg?
Yeah, so we had 1 resignation. Sue Whalen, the technology systems administrator, retired. So I believe she retired last week. Sean, is that accurate? So
Yes.
we, Julie Doyle and the technology team hired a person, Heather Matthews, who also was relocating. And unfortunately, the relocation did not work out. So the person resigned. Thankfully, Julie had a strong pool of candidates and actually reached out to another candidate who has accepted the position, who we're very excited about.
Thank you. Communications, we have none at this time. We have approval of bills and payrolls, but that is usually done virtually with the subcommittee. Is that going well, Becky?
It is. It's so nice to just have it done electronically, and I'm sure that the board members appreciate not having to come in to sign documents as well.
And I miss going to the meetings and saying, okay, these are the green Northborough, blue is regional, Southborough is yellow, and who's going to sign what, right? Pass them around the table at the end of the meeting. So that makes it a lot easier. And now we're coming to the end of the agenda, of our agenda for tonight, and we have agenda items for next month. We have the CASTLE program, social emotional well-being of students, English, learner data presentation, and those all seem to be very heavy in length. So sometimes not all 3 may show up on the next month's agenda. So it depends upon when Greg and I look at the agenda, and we don't want it going all night. So even though it's 3 there, it may not be next month. It may be put out for the next 2 months or so. Is there anything else that board members or administration would like to see on the agenda? Okay.
No, but I have a question about communications.
Sure, go ahead.
Is the Harbinger being produced, the hard copy newspaper being produced in a pandemic?
It's not. They are entirely online currently.
Okay, thank you.
Any other communications? Any other comments? Okay.
I would just say, Madam Chair, I would have to go back to my notes and to see what department we have scheduled for January. Just in the same way we had our guidance department shared tonight, I'd have to look back. I can get you that answer in a moment.
Okay, thank you. And as all board members know, if there is anything that takes place, if it's at a meeting that you're at and you would like, you can always do it through audience sharing, or if there is something that you'd like to see on the agenda as time goes by, just like Greg and I know before probably the second week in January before we set the agenda. Okay. All right. Mr. Bevan,
It's the science department.
Science department. Okay.
So I can reach out to department head Lori Zanini and ask her to start thinking about that presentation.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much. All right. Seeing that we're at the close of the meeting and we've taken care of all our agenda items, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved by Kathleen and second by
Second.
Paul Desmond. Okay, and it's a roll call. I know there's no discussion on this one. Roll call vote. Karen Ayers.
Yes.
Chris Covino.
Yes.
Paul Desmond.
Yes.
Kathleen Highland.
Yes.
Sean O'Shea,
Yes.
Kathleen Plutchko, Kathleen? Yes, and Joan Frank, yes, and it's unanimous. Everybody, before we adjourn, happy holidays. Be safe tomorrow and the next couple days. And thank you to everybody. Thank you, thank you.
Get some,
Have
take
a good
some
night.
rest
Happy
time.
holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays, everybody.
Yes.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Be well.